Hey there, how there, ho there, it's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome to another Cutter Top 10 NFL video. And today we're going to be looking at the top 10 worst NFL teams of all time. Of course, I am rocking the Tom Brady jersey. That's, of course, number 12 with football numbers. And yes, the Patriots will have one team on the list, and it's not anything to do with Tom Brady. Here we go. In my opinion, number 10 is the 2001 Carolina Panthers. They went 1-15. So what? Big deal. The Panthers losing 15 games in the season, which is weird because 15 years later, they would actually have a 15-win season. But the main reason is because Carolina won on the opening day thanks to a pair of Michael Bates touchdowns. But what people forget is that the 2001 Panthers didn't win a game for the rest of the season. That's right. Their losing streak was 15. They had the longest in-season losing streak at 15 games with a win. There are some winless teams on here, but the 2001 Panthers actually won their first game and lost the next 15. So that is the longest losing streak in a season with a team only winning one game. Many teams with one win have won it in the mid-season and all that. At number 9 is the 1991 Indianapolis Colts. The Colts could only score one win. What's even worse, they only could score 143 points in the 16-game schedule. That's not even 10 points a game. Because 10 points a game is 160, so they fell 17 points short, or technically 1 point per game short. So they were just under 9 points per game. Because 9 points per game is 144. They had terrible offense. Their defense was not much better. The Colts thought they could get the answer with Quentin Curriat and Steve Edmond, but unfortunately those two guys were injury prone. Number 8 is another Colts team, the 1981 Colts. They were 2-14. Yeah, they only won 2 games. But the problem was, it wasn't the fact that they won 2 games that they're higher up than the 91 Colts. It's the fact they've given up. They gave up 533 points. If you do the math, well, 30 points per game, that's 480 points. And 53 on top. So these guys gave up 33 points per game, roughly. That's amazing. Most teams, it would be a miracle to hit 30 points a game. But this team gave up 33 points. They lost several games by lopsided margins. Well, what do you expect? Yeah, it's like, what do you expect? And number 7 is the 1960 Dallas Cowboys. First year in the NFL, sure, they were winless and had a tie against the New York Giants, Tom Landry's former team. But let's not forget, this is an expansion team. And, the rules about expansion were not really that great. Dallas did not have anything to do with this team. Anyway, they couldn't win a game to save their life. Their roster was thin. They struggled against established clubs. I mean, Dallas went from a terrible 0-11-1 season in 1960, and in 6 short years, they were challenging for the NFL title, losing to the Packers and the like. And then, in the 70s, they get that better. So, yeah, that was amazing how the Cowboys could do it, and the tie against Landry. Number 6 on the 1980 Saints, or the Aints, as they call them. One honorable mention is the Houston Oilers of the 1970s that were terrible under their coach, Bill Peterson, who had a lot of mellow props saying that you have to stand on your helmets with the sidelines under your arm. Nevertheless, the 1980 Aints were terrible, very much terrible. They started losing a lot of games. They played on Monday Night Football, and then that's when something popular came up. This was the team that invented the paper bag over the head. They called themselves the Aints, and the paper bags were big because they didn't want to be identified with being Saints fans. The 1980 Saints almost went winless if it weren't for a sloppy win over the New York Jets at Chase Stadium, and the fans actually came out when the team playing touchdown and gave them a standing ovation. Number 5 is the 1990 New England Patriots. I told you the New England Patriots would be on this list. The 1990 team sucked. They were 1-15, could only score 181 points while allowing 446, which was very terrible. And no, it's just under 30 points per game. Their offense was bad. Steve Grogan retired. Tony Eason was somewhere else. They were frequently blown out. And Victor Kiam, who bought the Patriots, who was the Remington um, owner, and he would own the Remington shaving company. Knew what he wanted. Terrible. And New England had terrible coaching, and their quarterback was terrible. The 1990 Patriots, fortunately, 7 years later, the Patriots would be going to the Super Bowl against the Packers. What's even more amazing is Victor Kiam sold the team, and almost the team moved to St. Louis. But thankfully, one Robert Kraft kept the team in New England. Number 4 is the 1982 Baltimore Colts, and the top 4 had 0 wins in their seasons. The 1982 Colts went 0-8-1. You'd be thinking, that's a stretch, right? Nope, that's the 1982 season. The Baltimore Colts did not win a game in that season. It was a strike-shortened season. Remember, that's just when the NFL decided to go on strike after week 2, and then for weeks upon weeks, they fought against things. The players were against the owners, and baseball was big. ABC did Sunday afternoon baseball, which was big because remember that was Earl Weaver's last game as the Orioles were trying to chase Milwaukee and force a 1-game tiebreak. That failed. CBS showed old games and some movies. Well, NBC decided to go with the biggest step and broadcast football. Not just any football from their neighbors, from north of the border. Unfortunately, because the first few weeks were snooze fests, aka like blowouts, NBC decided to back away. Idiots. Clowns, whatever. Anyway, the Colts gave up over 400 points. They actually gave up 38 points per game. In a full season, that would have beaten their 1981 counterparts, bar none. They couldn't win a game to save their lives. And I do believe this was the year that Art Schlichter was the star quarterback, or was he the. Yeah. No, this was the year Art Schlichter was supposed to be the solution at quarterback from Ohio State. Unfortunately, he carried a gambling compulsion that ruined him and made him the last player for a while in NFL history to be expelled for gambling. Of course, this season was the season in which the Colts ended up getting the number 1 draft pick, which was John Elway. But unfortunately, John Elway did not want to play for Baltimore and all that. Well, his father, Jack, told him not to. But yeah, Elway didn't want to play for Baltimore. He wanted to play somewhere else. Knowing Baltimore had a terrible organization, Robert Irsay was going to move the team away from Baltimore to Indianapolis. Of course, that didn't happen yet. There was actually another reason why John Elway didn't want to play for Baltimore. And people forget about this, is that Baltimore's head coach was white. Because Baltimore's head coach was Frank Kush, who is known for his disciplinarian tactics at Arizona State. And since John Elway played at Stanford and his father Jack coached the Cardinal, they knew what type of asshole Frank Kush was. Baltimore made a deal with Denver, and Denver went out. Well, Baltimore moved to Indianapolis. Number 3 is the 2007 Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns were winless. Cleveland has had a terrible season, a series of events since coming back in the league in 1999. Everyone remembers in 1995 that Cleveland had a bad stadium deal. Municipal Stadium lost the tribe to Jacobs Field and, patchwork and all that. Cleveland won it under Rison, but Rison didn't give him a good season. And Cleveland was doing decently until they found out that Art Modell sold the team to Baltimore, saying he had no choice. He kind of had a choice and all that. But yeah, Baltimore got their team back after the Colts left for Indy. But anyway, Cleveland were told that they could come back as a team in 1999. But the NFL said they would be called inactive, and the Baltimore Ravens would be called an expansion team. Logic, am I right? Anyway, Cleveland has had some terrible years and all that, including getting shut out 43-0 in their first game by the Pittsburgh Steelers in Memphis, right? 43. But anyway, the 2017 Browns were terrible. Turnovers, poor quarterback play, close losses, and they had futility that haunted the franchise for years. Well, it haunted the franchise before 2017. Anyway, number 2 is the 2008 Lions. The Lions were trying their best and all that. Their defense allowed 517 points not per game, but 517 points. That's still not the worst in NFL history. That's the 1981 Colts. They had many losses by double-digit margins. Their first game was against the Atlanta Falcons, and on Matt Ryan's first pass completion, it was a 70-plus yard touchdown. And then, let's not forget the game in Minnesota when Dan Orlovsky trying to scramble. He scrambled out of the end zone for a safety, but didn't know he was out of the end zone. And then tried to throw the pass, but he had a safety. The 2008 Lions were just cursed and all that. Calvin Johnson was pretty good for the team, but you can only go so far. The Lions tried John Kidna and a few other quarterbacks, but failed miserably. They got embarrassed on Thanksgiving Day by, I think, the Colts. Or was it the Texans? Someone embarrassed them on Thanksgiving Day. And the Lions ended up 0-16, becoming the first team to do so. And all that. They got Matthew Stafford, and he, years later, would help them win a playoff game for the first time in God knows how long years. But yeah, Detroit tried, and Megatron quit at the height of his power. And number 1 is the 1976 Tampa Bay Bucks, who went 0-14. The problem was, I said the Lions were 0-16, Tampa was 0-14. Back in the 70s, the NFL was a 14-game schedule instead of 16. It was 1978 that they changed it to 16 games and added 2 teams. Who knows? Maybe the 72 Dolphins would not have been undefeated with those 2 extra games. Nevertheless, the Bucks just were terrible. I mean, the NFL gave Tampa a bum rap with the expansion players being so bad they wouldn't even make World Football League rosters. Oh, yep, that's right. But anyway, yeah, Tampa had trouble. They had Steve Spurrier, who was trying to be a quarterback and tried to pass, and it sucked. And basically, he fucked off to be a coach for the Gators. They would Tampa were shut out 5 times. They scored only 125 points per game in a 14-game schedule. That's 140 points. 10 per game is 140. So they were 15 short of that. They took on both sides of the ball. Despite the fact that John McKay, the great USC head coach of the 60s and 70s, was Tampa's first coach. And basically, he dryly would it after someone said, "What did you think about your offense's execution?" I said, he would go, "I'm all for it." There were a few comments he made that I don't want to make. But anyway, has to do with a plane crash. But nevertheless, the 76 Bucks just couldn't do it. I mean, Tampa really were miserable in the old days. I mean, Doug Williams was a great quarterback, but Hugh Culverhouse was penny pinching, and Doug Williams left for greener pastures, and, that's just terrible. Tampa actually, but to add more to the 1976 Tampa Bay Buccaneers is that they actually lost the first 12 games of the next season. So they had a 26-game losing streak. Not even the Lions of 08, 09, or the Cleveland Browns of 2017 continued their losing streak in a terrible way. So Tampa won a chance game in New Orleans at the Superdome, and New Orleans decided to fire Hank Stram because of that. So yeah, for futility, my name is Tampa. Really, it is. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.